Provide some context. When I came to Warwick, I came from a university in the Netherlands where I had, together with a colleague, started an institute, if you want to call it that, although we were not allowed to call it that, on post-colonial studies, called the Post-Colonial Initiative. And her specialty was actually migration studies. She had done some of the pioneering work on migration studies. And we had had several experiences looking at the question of migration as a defining element throughout history, even though many people would like to present migration as a problem, a crisis of the present. Forgetting that human history is a history of migration. When I was in the department, I started in 2013, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the fact that the AHRC provided what I can call a form of flash funding. I was just saying that there's flash fiction, right? Apparently you write a story in 5 minutes, up to 50 words, or if you can do 300 words, you get 15 minutes. But flash funding is something that I thought was very good. For much of the complaint that we academics can do about funding institutions and processes and the time that it takes to put bids for grants that then we don't get, I was impressed by the fact that the AHRC recognized that there is a need to provide minimal funding to get limited projects started which might lead to something else or should have an immediate effect. And the amounts available were rather limited. We were talking about £50,000 per university available in the country. But it was the closest that I have seen to providing academics with the possibility to very quickly say, we need to intervene on this area, this is what we can do, this will be the outcome, with a minimum, if you want, of fuss. Still with peer review and all of that, but a minimum of fuss. And Warwick, there were several projects presented, and then the university chose 2 projects, and one of them was mine, and the other one was on the way in use, the way in which legislation is changing the use of drugs for medicinal purposes in the country. Very topical, that one. This project, the Offer House project that Emanuelle mentioned, was named after this mansion belonging to the Church of England in Coventry, which had been the bishop's residence at one point. And the English department had rented it to hold meetings and things like that. It's an Edwardian, very nice estate. And it was vacant, and so the Church of England has offered it for the refugees. And I have seen that the far-right elements in Coventry were incensed by this. And I said, this is actually something I find remarkable, that Coventry is moving to welcome refugees in this way, knowing the way in which even many of the residents, it's an economically depressed area, post-industrial, etc., etc., are going to be precisely the type of population that might have issues with anyone who comes from outside, doesn't matter what. And you heard Peter this morning, and I think that he was very good in presenting the historical reasons as well as the people reasons for welcoming and for choosing and deciding to be a city of sanctuary on the part of Coventry. And so I thought I can do very quickly a proposal to the HRC to look at the people who are coming into Coventry and to look at the way in which they narrate themselves their journey. Some of this is not going to work out. I think that one thing is writing the proposal, the other one is then seeing what comes at it. The limitation, the great limitation, I would say, is my inability to deal with the language. I think that the great advantage is that I could count both on Emanuelle as well as on Reem. For two reasons, because I think that if it wasn't the teamwork between them, and obviously Peter and other people and the families being willing to talk to them, it would have been absolutely impossible. So my role is absolutely limited. I just thought this is actually one opportunity in which the funding agency is saying, you know, it has to be very concrete, but it can be blue sky. Do you want money? What do you want it for? Show us that this is actually something that is just not talking about literary theory, but has to do with real world issues. And Emanuelle is someone who has wide experience doing interviews, published interviews, and so on. And I also thought that she would be someone who would be very good in terms of approaching people who are still essentially in a very vulnerable situation. I'm not even talking about the traumatic past or anything like that, but who might regard any intervention from what appears to be an official entity or an academic or something like that as something that will not necessarily be there to be trusted. And I thought, if I show up there, I might actually be creating more of a barrier than anything else. Or you can say I'm just lazy and I like it that it did the work. It's another way of explaining it. But of course there's the language issue, and I think that it was absolutely amazing that we could depend on Reem, because it was an enormous amount of work. They were paid a mere pittance. I hope it's being recorded, because the regulations only allowed them to receive so much money. And they were actually willing to do much more work, but that's where the bureaucracy comes in. We had basically 6 weeks in which to spend the money. And so the work had to be done within 6 weeks.
Oh, and why couldn't we receive more or whatever? Because we're actually not British citizens, and our working hours are reduced because we're postgraduate students working, and you do have that on the back. I had that on the back of my residence permit, and these are the kind of regulations, so the kind of nature. It was not the inability of the departments or anything. They're like, okay, we have a budget, we could share the budget in a way that would pay for your work, but we're like, there was only so much that we can pay you, giving all the constraints.
So that is my only frustration as far as that goes. Now, they've collected the materials, and we'll be talking about that and the whole process. I'm still trying to go through it slowly. And what I want to do is several things. We have all kinds of restrictions. In order for the project to be approved by the ethics committee, we had to put on a bear dance for them. Basically, what we could do with the interviews, at the interviews, after the interviews, is absolutely restricted. The material will be deposited in the Modern Records Center here at the university, which is prepared for material like that, and it will be available for researchers. One of my key ideas was that I had hoped that we could collect this. Even if I wouldn't write anything about it, that is something I want to, but it's not the key thing. The key thing to me would be also to try to preserve that. I have no idea what it will be like, say, in the forthcoming generation, if the people want to have access to that. And they might not necessarily be able to talk to the parents, or the parents might not want to talk to them, or might not say certain things. And I thought, there would be a record there, at least a verbal one, transcribed. It will be restricted. You have to prove that you are indeed a researcher and what you want to do with it. You'll have to sign all kinds of things that you cannot use material, etc., etc. But that's the rule of the game. And I am also hoping that by putting it into this context, that we can advance it. I had first imagined that we would be doing a book that would be directed to a broad public. And then Brexit came along, and I think Brexit changed the game, at least to me, because I think that the goodwill that there might have been at some point for the broader public to look at us in a certain light, as to a certain extent, it hasn't disappeared, but it has become much more focused and restricted. And I think that there is, at the moment, a malaise in this country about discussing issues of migrants that I find a bit toxic. So, together with Joe, what we have been talking about is that instead we would like to move more towards the academic realm. And I think that the interdisciplinary aspect and other people will be approached as well to contribute. But for instance, something like Peter's contribution, I think it's very important to have the participation from people who are more directly involved in policy is absolutely crucial to this. And that's what we will hope will be, say, one output. We were not required, I said that I will do one short article, and I will do one short article. That is not the issue. It could even be descriptive, it doesn't have to be, it's not going to be, the revelation of scholarship, something like that. But what I'm hoping is that our common volume afterwards will be able to contribute to the discussion actually of the construction of Europe, because I think that what the questions of the migrants have done is force us to totally rethink the platitudes about Europe and about what we thought. I think that I'm talking about Europe and not European Union. We have noticed that is still a different thing. The European Union, as much as I think it has helped certain things, also too often likes to praise itself for being better than what it is, and it can be very vacuous when it comes to its ideals. Now, I've talked too much. I should give the word to the two of them who did all of the work. So, Emanuelle and Reem, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, thank you so much, Paula. So this presentation is divided in 3 parts. So there would be me introducing the project and telling you how it was supposed to work and how it did work. Paolo telling you a little bit about his perspective and how he came about writing the project, and then Reem talking about specific challenges that she had while working with the project, because she did all the interpretation of it. I speak no word of Arabic, maybe 2 or 3 words, but that's all I do. And after that, I'll just wrap up with my own views on the project, so it's not due to be very long. So, the name that you have here is a name that Paolo gave, and that was in the funding bid. So, Offa House Project, Refugees, Narratives and Forms of Preserving and Reconstructing the Self, which is pretty self-explanatory. The idea of Offa House, Paolo told you about. And funny enough, when we actually got to the council and spoke to Peter Barnett, we realized that people were never really hosted at the Offa House. It was one idea that had been scrapped, and people now hadn't really, the refugees that came under the program that Peter supervises have not been that, but we left the name anyway because the meaning is there. This picture is a picture I took of the houses, of the house of one of the families that we visited. For many reasons that I'll tell you a little bit more about, I did not take many pictures of the actual interviewees. but I took pictures of things that were around us on that, on the occasions of the interviews, and you'll see that there's patterns repeating in all those pictures. But as you can see, it's a garden as neat as you can find, and it's all surrounded by vegetables that gentleman was planting with his skills in agriculture. He was really making the garden into a... It is a garden, but the flowers that he was planting were all actually edible. And this is what I mean, it was not arranged as a vegetable yard, it was arranged as a garden. So it was absolutely beautiful to see how those things were blending together. And that's the reason it's there. So, as I told you, that's the outline of the presentation. Summary, views. Paulo has already given his view, so we're going to go through Reem and back to me. So the aims of the project, as Paulo said, they were very simple, straightforward. First, to register those narratives before they would vanish. So create an archive of first-hand accounts of the journey, of the crossing, of how these people that we interviewed experienced their crossing, and create an archive first for future research, and then maybe later on to access of the open public, depending on the kind of